Hello, election judges. My name is Mike Stolberger. I'm Director of Elections for Blue Earth County, and I'm going to walk you through the DS200. It's our new ballot tabulator that we'll be using on Election Day in all of our polling places. Let me show you the equipment a little bit. So the DS200 is going to be on a black plastic roller case now instead of the normal cases that were gray metal. But otherwise it still has much of the same features. It has our auxiliary slot for our ballots here, and we can open those up and make sure that they're empty as we begin our election day. And we're going to, of course, check the bottom one as well. Remember that whenever you're working with this equipment, you're going to make sure that you have two election judges of different parties there with you to take care of any of these tasks that we're working on. Also remember, we're going to have checklists, so you're going to have information on election day to work through as you're reviewing all of that. So I've checked the two ballot box slots. We're making sure those are empty. I'll spin around the device for you so you can see what's going on in the back. We also in the back have the battery compartment, and so one of the first things you're going to do on election day is open that up and disconnect the cord. Unwind the cord so that you can plug it in. We'll take care of that in just a second. The other thing that we're going to do in the back of the device here is pay very close attention to this metal bar. This metal bar locks in the ballot transport portion of the machine. That prevents any ballots from getting into the ballot tabulator bin without permission to do so. So we want to make sure that we put it in the unlocked position. That means bringing it down to the green label here, and it just sits in that little white compartment there. Don't lock it in, just leave it sitting in there. All right, so we make sure that metal bin or bar is always down, and you'll know very quickly on election day, because if you don't have that down, no ballots will go through the machine and you'll be able to spin it around and take care of that. So next I am going to plug in our ballot bin and our tabulator. We're going to plug it into either a wall plug or a surge protector. We're just going to make sure that that's a powered outlet, and we want to make sure that we plug it in first before we go any further. So we check our bins, we get the cord out of the back, we put the metal bar down in the back, and we plug it in. Then we can start opening the device. And so we're going to move to that step next here and show you what it looks like once we open up the DS200. So we've just plugged in our tabulator, and now we're ready to actually open it up and get the scanner ready to go. So again, we have our key. We're going to unlock the device. You're also likely going to need to break some seals, security seals. Wherever you find those, just make sure you break them and follow the protocols for that. And then once we've got the device unlocked, easier said than done, we can bring that up. And as long as we have it plugged in first, we should be able to just unlock and open up the screen. And the screen should pop itself on if we've got everything plugged in. We're just going to give it a second to load. And once we get that up and loaded, we're going to follow the instructions. So go ahead and come in a little bit closer into the screen so that you can see what we've got for our instructions. It's going to go through some loading sessions and some screens that'll pull up there. It'll take just a second. While I'm letting that load, I'll let you know that the ballot is going to get fed into this gray section here. Sometimes voters try to feed the ballot on this top black portion. No, we want to put the ballot in this lower section. The ballot can go any orientation, face up, face down. It'll be read, no problem. Either way that a voter feeds it in there. A couple of other things that I'll show you on the tabulator as we wait for that to continue loading is that it gets locked into place with this foam that's a little bit lower in the screen here for you. You shouldn't have to worry about relocking the device in there at all, but because this is such a new piece of equipment, if you would have to open that up, you have to give that a little extra pressure and pushing to get that to load fully for us. We'll also get into the compartment over here. This is where your results tapes will be printing, and then we're also going to get into the access panel in just a little bit. That's off to this side there. But so we continue to wait for it to load up here. It should load up the election that is preloaded for you, and we'll be able to open it up and allow voters to start voting. As we look here, if we come in real close on the screen, you'll see that it's going to list the public count, which should be 0 on election morning for you, and then you'll notice that there's a private count or a protected count. That is the life history of ballots that were run through the tabulator. You're always concerned about the public count, and that should be 0 on election morning. A couple of other things you're going to be able to see there is that we have the date and time. We also have an indicator that we're plugged into power, and then of course we have all of our election information on the very top here. Okay, so we've now opened up the polls. This original report that comes out is just our report that tells us that the machine is calibrated and set up for the election. We don't have to worry about anything with that. What you need to be concerned about is making sure that the right election is loaded. So that'll say the August 11th primary. And then we want to make sure we have the right precinct and polling place listed for you. Those are what you're going to be concerned with as a judge. As long as that information is correct, that you're plugged into power, we can open the polls. Once we open the polls, we get the additional information to come out on our report. This is our zero tape for our returning judges. We let that print. And it will have all the zeros listed for all of the candidates and contests on our ballot. We're going to let that roll. And once we get that all set up, we'll be able to just leave that in the side of the device. We'll just have you shove it down into the corner there. And remember, our election judges need to sign on here, indicating that it's a zero tape. Those rules haven't changed from the other devices. With that, we have now opened up the DS200. We can go to voting mode, and we'll be ready to feed in our first ballot. In one of our earlier videos, I let you know that a really quick, easy way to see that you're plugged into power is that this animated ballot does move. If we would unplug the device, it'll still work. That ballot will just stop moving on the screen. So I'm going to leave it there. We're going to come back in just a couple of seconds here and actually talk about closing down the equipment and some of the other admin features that you might need. So we've now had an entire election day, and we've worked with all of our voters and made sure that the last ballot that was cast is cast into the machine. Remember, the last voter who's in line at 8 o'clock is eligible to vote, provided that they can work through that entire process. So we make sure that we've received their ballot, it's been fed through the machine, and then we can start talking about closing the polls. The first thing that we're going to remember with closing the polls is we need 2 election judges, right, of different political parties, and then we're going to check to make sure that our auxiliary slots are empty, that we didn't have any ballots fed through here, and then we have all of our ballots down in the ballot compartment there. That's where we're going to work with them and actually get them packed up later, following the checklists that are provided for you on election day to help close the polls. So let's take a closer look at the screen here and talk about what closing the polls actually means. I'm going to take a second just to point out the Tools button. The Tools button is where we're going to do any sort of administrative work that we might need to do. You'll be provided the password on election day to get into this system. That's going to change. I just wanted you to be aware of that, so if you would need assistance and we're going to ask you to help, we're going to have you go to the Tools setting. But so let's actually close this down. One thing that we're going to do before we close down is just a real quick check for us is we're going to take a look at that public count. That should match the number of voters that you've checked in on your poll pads. It should match the number of ballots you've issued because we want to make sure that matches the number of ballots we've counted. We're going to reconcile that out. If we have any issues, we're going to try to troubleshoot it, or we're going to call the county to get some assistance on that. But let's say that the numbers are all exactly right and we're ready to roll here. We're going to open up the back compartment. And on the back compartment, we're going to find 2 buttons. We have a power button and a close the polls button. Since we're closing the polls, you can guess which button we're going to push. We're going to push the close polls button, and you're going to see some instructions on the screen. You have chosen to close the polls. We can return to voting if we find that we have a ballot that we need to count or something wasn't quite right, but everything balances for us, so we can close the polls. And when we push close the polls, we are going to get our results tape to print out. The results tape is going to list all of the votes cast, and it's going to list it by contest and by candidate. So just like our other results tab tape, it'll look like what our returning judges are used to seeing, and we're ultimately going to get to that place to sign our election judge signatures, certifying those results. This tape will be set up to print the right number that you need. Remember, we're going to have 3 of them. 1 gets posted in the polling place, but for demonstration purposes, we had it end at 1. So just allow it to print whatever you need it to print. Once it's printed, we can actually take that off, sign that, and now we can actually turn off the device. We allow that to shut down, power down, and we're going to pay attention to that power down screen because we have one very last important thing to do, but we want to make sure we don't do it too early in the process. So we're going to let this fully power down before we actually remove the thumb drive. The thumb drive is over in the access compartment. It is preloaded for you on election day, and you will not do anything with this thumb drive until the very, very end. So we're going to let that fully power down, and you know that you're ready to do something now because the light went from red, it was green to red, and now it is fully off. When we have it fully off, we can then remove the thumb drive. The thumb drive is going to be labeled for your polling place, and this is what's going to get returned to us on election night by your head judges as it has the results. But it's very, very important to remember to not remove this until everything is powered down. The power button goes from green to red to completely off. Then we can remove the thumb drive. Super important to wait to the end. If we pull that out too soon, it could corrupt the results and we'll have to run all the ballots back through. Not something we would want to do. Once we have the machine shut down, we can close the screen. We can lock the tabulator itself. We can close the top. And we can wrap up our power cord. Remember, we have one more thing to do back here. We need to raise this bar back into the locked position. Reason we do that again is to close that ballot transfer area so that nobody would be able to feed a ballot through there. They're not going to be able to feed a ballot anyways because they don't know the codes to log back into the elections. They don't have a thumb drive in there, but we like to have triple checks in place for our election security, and that's one more of those. So there we go. You have the DS200. That is our ballot tabulator in the polling places on election day. I hope you found this video to be helpful. Remember, we have lots of contact information available throughout the rest of our videos. All of our videos live online, so you can also review them. And remember, you can also come into our optional capstone session to watch another demonstration, ask questions, and actually utilize the tabulator if you want to give it a try. Thank you.